Look at yourself at 40, 50, 60, and then look at who you were at 20. The 20-year-old was braver, loved harder, got hurt and came back, trusted people, felt things fully. You call what you are now mature. That's just the polite word for what actually happened to you. Nobody warned you about this part. Not really. They talk about wisdom, about perspective, about how things get easier once you've lived enough to know better. That's the version they sell at graduation speeches and birthday toasts. The comfortable lie that aging is a kind of graduation, that you emerge from the years refined, softened, enlightened. What they don't tell you is what actually happens to a person. What they don't say, what nobody says out loud because saying it out loud feels like a confession, is that the longer you live, the more damage you accumulate. And damage doesn't just sit quietly inside you. It changes you, it rewires you, and not towards something better. When you were young, you were actually a better person. When you were young, you could be hurt and recover. Someone rejected you when you cried for a week, and then somehow you loved again with the same reckless completeness as before. You failed at something and the failure stung, but it didn't define you yet. You were wrong about things, constantly, embarrassingly wrong, and it didn't matter because there was still time to be otherwise. More than that, you were open. Not naive in the stupid sense people dismiss, open in the sense that you could still be moved. Music could stop you cold in the middle of a street. A stranger's face could break something loose in your chest. You could read a sentence and feel like it had been written specifically to reach you. You could sit with a friend until 4 in the morning and feel, genuinely feel, that this conversation mattered infinitely. That's not nostalgia. That's not you remembering things prettier than they were. That's just the truth of what it is to be a person before the world has finished with them. Now notice what replaced it. Not wisdom, not peace, something quieter and far more corrosive, a growing inability to be touched by things. And here is the specific detail nobody includes. You didn't lose this capacity in one dramatic moment. You didn't get your heart broken once and close forever. It happened in increments so small you couldn't defend against them. The third time a friendship slowly dissolved without explanation, the second job that promised meaning and delivered monotony, the moment you realized mid-conversation with someone you loved that you were performing interest rather than feeling it, and this had been happening for months without you noticing. Each of these cost you something. Not much individually, but the bill compounded quietly, and one day you went to feel something fully and discovered the tank was lower than you remembered, and it never completely refilled. You don't notice when it happens. There's no ceremony, no moment where you can point and say, there, that's where it went. It drains out slowly over years of small confirmations that things are more or less as predictable as you'd begun to suspect. The person who promised they'd be different turns out to be the same. The job that was supposed to feel meaningful starts to feel like a machine you operate. The city you move to in order to change your life becomes just where you live. The relationship that felt electrical in the beginning settles into a pattern, a comfortable or uncomfortable groove, but a groove nonetheless. And here's what nobody talks about. After enough of this, you stop expecting otherwise. Not consciously, not dramatically, you just quietly lower the aperture. You let less in. Because letting things in fully the way you did at 22 costs something you no longer have the reserves to pay. This is called maturity. It's dressed up in words like realistic, grounded, measured. What it actually is, a kind of preemptive numbness. You go slightly cold before the cold comes for you, so that at least you did it to yourself first. Here's what this looks like in practice, and pay attention because you've done this and you know it. Someone tells you exciting news, a new relationship, a new plan, a new belief that this time something is going to be extraordinary. And somewhere inside you, before you've even finished listening, a quiet voice runs the probability. You've seen this before. You know roughly how it ends. You smile, you say the right things, but internally you've already filed it under "we'll see," which is just the adult version of "I don't believe you." You used to be the person with the exciting news. Now you're the one quietly running the probability on someone else's hope. Notice when that switch happened. Notice how permanent it feels. This is the part really people don't admit. The older you get, the more afraid you are. Not of childish things, not of monsters or darkness, of specific, very real things that you now understand are genuinely possible because you've watched them happen. You've watched people get sick and stay sick. You know now, not abstractly, but in your body, what it means to lose someone permanently. You've seen a career dissolve, a marriage become a legal formality, a friendship rot from the inside while both people pretended not to notice. You've watched someone you loved become unrecognizable through grief, or through bitterness, or just through the slow, grinding passage of decades. So now you're careful, strategically careful in ways you dress up as discernment. You don't fully invest in people because you've done the math, unconsciously, and you know investment carries risk. You don't chase things too hard because you felt what it's like to chase and not catch. You hedge, you hold back, you keep an exit visible in most situations because experience has taught you that exits matter. And you call this wisdom. But watch what it costs. Watch the relationships you approach at arm's length and then wonder why they never fully reach you. Watch the opportunities you intellectually talked yourself out of because you could see the 17 ways they might fail. Watch yourself standing at the edge of something that could actually be beautiful, something your 20-year-old self would have leapt into without breathing, and feel yourself hesitate, calculate, withdraw. Fear wearing the clothes of experience is still fear. It just smells better. Here's the example that will make you uncomfortable because it is too specific to deny. Think about the last time someone new entered your life with the genuine potential to matter. A person, a project, an idea that had real electricity in it. And really notice how quickly your mind moved toward protection, how fast you started building the case for why it probably wouldn't work out, how you shared less than you actually felt, moved slower than you actually wanted to, kept one foot outside the door, not because the situation demanded caution, but because you are now a person who keeps one foot outside the door. That is not discernment. That is damage managing itself. And the cost is that you are living smaller than you are capable of, and you have been for years. And you have dressed this smallness in the language of wisdom so thoroughly that you've almost convinced yourself. When you're young, resentment is a temporary visitor. Someone wrongs you, you're angry, you eventually let it go because you don't yet have the architecture to permanently house grievances. Your identity isn't built around them yet. Give it time. After enough years, resentments stop being visitors and become structural. They become part of how the building holds together. The brother who got more, the career that should have gone differently, the relationship where you gave everything and it still wasn't enough, the decade you spent doing what you were supposed to do only to discover the promised reward was a fiction. These things solidify. And here's the dangerous part. You stop being able to separate them from your personality. You think you're a person who sees things clearly. You think you're realistic, undiluted, honest about the world. What you actually are, in significant part, is a person who was hurt and never finished being hurt, and who built an entire worldview on top of that unresolved wound. Your cynicism isn't philosophy. Your detachment isn't wisdom. A lot of it, more than you want to know, is old pain that you learned to call sophistication because calling it pain would require doing something about it. And doing something about it, at this point, feels like being asked to demolish a building you've lived in for 30 years. Where would you even go? But here's the part that makes this truly dark. Your resentments don't stay contained to the people who caused them. That's the lie you tell yourself, that you're only cold towards the ones who earned it. In reality, resentment leaks. It gets on everything. The colleague who reminds you faintly of the person who betrayed you gets a version of that old anger they never deserved. The partner who makes the same kind of mistake someone made 15 years ago gets the accumulated interest of every time it happened before. Your children, if you have them, get a father or mother who is sometimes not responding to them at all, but to a ghost from a decade before they were born. You are punishing people for crimes they didn't commit, with a severity calibrated by wounds they didn't inflict, and you mostly don't know you're doing it. That is what unprocessed resentment actually does. It doesn't stay where you put it. It spreads. And the people closest to you pay the highest price for damage that was done by people who are no longer even in your life. You do not, with age, become better at loving people. You become more skilled at the performance of it, at the language, at the gestures, at not making the obvious amateur mistakes, but the actual interior experience of love, the surrender of it, the terrifying willingness to let another person matter to you completely, that gets harder, not easier, with every passing year of accumulated loss. Because every time you have loved and then lost, or loved and then been disappointed, or loved and watched the beloved slowly become a stranger, your nervous system files that away as evidence. Evidence that full love is full exposure. Evidence that the cost of opening is the risk of devastation. Evidence that maybe if you had been slightly less open last time, it would have hurt slightly less. So you adapt. Not consciously, but you adapt. You love, but from a position. You care, but with a structure around it. You give, but you keep a ledger somewhere, just in case.
And the person across from you can feel this, even if they don't have words for it. Even if you seem worn and present and attentive, there's a door inside you that you used to leave open and now stays mostly shut. They can feel the draft from under it. Meanwhile, you're wondering why nothing feels as real as it once did, why intimacy, even when technically achieved, feels somehow thin. And here is the specific cruelty of this that nobody names. You will, at some point, be loved by someone who is still capable of the full thing. Someone younger or simply less damaged who brings you everything, the terrifying, unguarded, completely open version of love that you yourself used to be capable of. And instead of being moved by it, part of you will be unsettled by it. You will find their openness excessive, their need for closeness slightly suffocating, their hope slightly embarrassing. You will mistake your own incapacity for their immaturity. You will tell yourself they just don't understand yet how things work. What you won't say, what you cannot afford to say, is that they understand exactly how love works. You are the one who forgot. Over years, you learn what gets punished. You learn which parts of yourself create friction. The enthusiasm that got called naive, the sensitivity that got called weakness, the ambition that got called arrogance, the softness that got exploited. And you make adjustments, small ones, so small they feel like maturity rather than amputation. You stop sharing certain ideas because the last time you did, the room went flat. You stop showing excitement about things because somewhere along the way, excitement started to feel like a vulnerability. You stop admitting to certain hopes because hopes on record can be measured against outcomes, and you're tired of the accounting. What you're left with is a version of yourself that is easier to maintain and harder to attack. A self that fits more smoothly into rooms, offends fewer people, requires less from others, and offers less in return. Manageable, consistent, safe, also barely recognizable to the person you were at 22. The specific horror of this process is that it happens with your cooperation. Nobody forced it. You made 1,000 micro decisions to sand down the edges, and each one felt reasonable at the time. But now you're sitting across from someone who genuinely wants to know you, and you're not sure what to give them because you're not entirely sure what's left. The most interesting, most alive parts of you got edited out one sensible decision at a time, and retrieving them would mean being willing to be punished for them again, and you're not sure anymore that you have the stomach for that. There's a version of yourself you carry for years, not delusional, not grandiose, just a possible you. The you that would have happened if circumstances had aligned slightly differently, if you had been braver at a particular moment, if you had chosen that other road when the fork was still visible. For a long time, this possible self is still somehow in play. There's still time to become it. You could still move, still change, still become the kind of person who lives as though it matters. Then something shifts. The possible self doesn't disappear, that would be simpler. It just stops feeling real. The gap between who you are and who you might have been stops feeling like something to close and starts feeling like a fact to manage. And that management, the daily work of not thinking too long about the unlived versions of your own life, is exhausting in a way that has no name. You just know that certain songs hit differently than they used to. That sometimes at a certain hour of the afternoon you feel something that isn't exactly sadness, but lives in the same building. That sometimes you look at a younger person doing something brave and feel something complicated, something that mixes genuine warmth with something you'd rather not identify. Here is what that unidentifiable thing actually is: grief. You are grieving a person who never died because they never fully lived. The you that didn't take the risk, didn't make the call, didn't stay or leave when leaving or staying still meant something. That grief doesn't come with a funeral or a date or a socially legible form. It just sits there, surfacing at random moments, during a song, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, and then submerging again before you can name it. And because it has no name and no ceremony, it never gets processed. It just accumulates in the background, adding its weight to everything else you're already carrying. When you're young, time is so abundant it barely registers as real.
You waste it without guilt because there is always more, stretching out ahead of you in quantities you can't even conceive of using. Then one morning, not metaphorically, sometimes literally one specific morning, you do the arithmetic, and the numbers don't work the way they used to. The years behind you now rival or outnumber the years realistically ahead, and whatever you thought you were saving yourself for, whatever you imagined you would do eventually, once things settled, once you were ready, that eventually is now. There is no more runway that you haven't already accounted for. This is the moment most people quietly go to war with time, not productively, desperately. They start moving faster without knowing why. They start buying things that feel like youth. They start looking at younger people not with warmth, but with a hunger they're ashamed of. They start making decisions, relationships, career changes, dramatic gestures that look from the outside like spontaneity and are from the inside pure panic. The sports car, the affair, the sudden spiritual awakening, the drastic haircut. These things aren't crises in the clinical sense, they're just a person who has finally done the arithmetic trying to outrun the answer. And the tragedy isn't the panic. The tragedy is what the panic costs. The people who get caught in the blast radius of someone else's reckoning with time. The marriages that explode, not because anyone stopped loving anyone, but because one person looked at the clock and couldn't stand the number. The children who spend years trying to understand why their father became a stranger at 50. Time's cruelty isn't that it runs out, it's what people do to each other when they realize it. Schopenhauer was right about most of this. He saw it without flinching and wrote it without apology. The will drives us forward through one emptiness into another, desire resolved only to immediately reform, satisfaction being nothing more than the brief absence of dissatisfaction. But there's something even he didn't entirely account for, something that lives just underneath the bitterness if you're willing to look. The damage that makes you worse also makes you, sometimes, more truthful. The person who has been broken open enough times eventually stops pretending in certain ways. They stop performing certainties they don't have. They stop pretending that the obvious darkness isn't there. They stop performing optimism they don't feel, which means that when they do feel something real, something that hasn't been managed or curated or safely contained, it carries a weight that untested feeling never could. There's a kind of honesty available to someone who has been sufficiently disappointed. Not wisdom, not peace, not the gentle understanding they promise you in films. Something rawer and less comfortable than that. You see people more clearly because you've stopped needing them to be anything other than what they are. You can sit with someone's actual suffering without flinching, without reframing it, without rushing toward a silver lining, because you've met enough darkness to not be afraid of it anymore. You also stop wasting time on certain performances. You've been to enough dinners where everyone pretended the food was better than it was, and the conversation more meaningful than it was, and the connection more real than it was. You've smiled through enough of those to have lost patience for them entirely. This is sometimes mistaken for antisocial behavior. What it actually is, an allergy to pretense that was earned through years of participating in it. This is not a happy ending. This is not redemption in any clean sense. This doesn't undo what the years took and what they left behind. But it is something. It is what remains after everything else has been stripped away by the grinding passage of a life lived honestly enough to hurt. You are worse. You are harder, colder, smaller in some ways, more defended, more afraid than you will admit, carrying damage you will never fully resolve, haunted by unlived versions of yourself, less capable of the open-armed surrender that once defined you, punishing people for crimes committed by other people in other decades, grieving a self that never got to exist, running out of time and knowing it. And you also know things that cannot be known any other way. You earned the damage. The question, the only question that remains, and it doesn't have a comfortable answer, is whether you're going to keep pretending it isn't there, or whether you're finally going to look at it directly. Not to fix it, some of it won't fix, but to stop letting it run you from the inside while you smile and tell everyone you're fine. Because the most dangerous version of this isn't the person who admits they've been changed by the years, it's the person who insists they haven't, who keeps performing the 20-year-old's openness with the 40-year-old's armor underneath, who says, "I'm not bitter," with the exact tone of someone who is, who has built such a complete story about their own resilience that there is no longer any room in the story for the truth. That person is lost in a way that's very hard to come back from, and they're far more common than anyone admits.